Welcome to TellerTalk, the podcast made for story lovers by storytellers. I'm Zosima Granger, a young author who hopes to one day become an old author. And today I'm joined from across the sea by Nick Jeffery, an aging geek who lives and works in the Vale of Glamorgan on the coast of South Wales. Nick is one of the leading researchers and experts on the life and work of J.K. Rowling, from Harry Potter to Cormoran Strike to Casual Vacancy. And it is an honor and a pleasure to have him on today. Thank you for being here, Nick.
Thank you, Zosima. Wonderful, wonderful to be here. Of course, and never have been a storyteller. I've never claimed to be creative, but I do love. I've always loved books, and I've just recently rediscovered my love of stories.
Yeah, how did that happen?
So, I think, like most geeky children, I love fiction, and I read the required reading list for a geeky child in the 70s and 80s. So Tolkien, Douglas Adams, Terry Pratchett, all the sort of required kid reading list, 70s and 80s. And then I've always loved science. I took an engineering degree, aeromechanical systems engineering, which is like it takes little bits of all of the engineering disciplines. And I got into the habit, practice, comfort of reading nonfiction. So I continued to consume books, but it was almost entirely nonfiction for about 30 years. So it was relatively recently, 2017, I was given a copy of a book that I'd never heard of before. So it was J.K. Rowling's The Casual Vacancy. It was her first novel for adults. And it blew me away. I mean, I had forgotten how good stories could be. I'd forgotten how powerful they could be. So I was reading to absorb facts, figures, knowledge, history, technology. I consumed them all. But this reading stories again, and of course, famously, it was the non-magical book from J.K. Rowling, but it had almost a magical, supernatural effect on me, and I'd forgotten what I experienced as a child, which is when you're reading a really good story, you almost come out of yourself, and it's that point at which you forget you're reading. So you sort of transition from words and sentences and text blocks on a page, and you forget that's happening, and you're in the story. You are with the characters. The emotion they are feeling is your emotion. You sort of come to the end of a chapter and you almost forget yourself. Well, this was a revelation to me. I experienced it as a child, but I had no idea that adults could experience this. And it was such a good book. I mean, Casual Vacancy is gritty reality. It's you could say it's depressing. Now, I mean, in the UK we have a tradition of what we call kitchen sink dramas, and this is sort of real life radio, largely dramas that have a lot of emotion in real life situations. And so I'm sort of used to that, but it's for somebody who is naturally emotionally repressed, as I think a lot of British people are, it allows you to experience that rawness with a degree of safety. And Casual Vacancy is a special kind of book because it is a story. There is an overarching plot, but almost every chapter is a short story in itself. It's a situation drama in itself. And I thought each chapter was just so beautifully done. And even now, when I go back to reread it, I tend not to read it as a cover to cover as a story. I'll go back and I'll pick the chapters and the situations that resonate most for me. Well, so long story short,
The so your reintroduction into the magical world of fiction was
yeah,
the Casual Vacancy,
it
which
was.
that might you might be unique in that. Uh,
I haven't met anyone else. So pleasingly, I've met lots of J.K. Rowling fans, Robert Galbraith fans, who also love The Casual Vacancy. There are many that don't, but there are lots that do.
yeah,
But I have never yet met someone who's read The Casual Vacancy before the Harry Potter series.
yeah,
But
that is unusual. Um I'm also a Casual Vacancy apologist. I well actually my experience with Casual Vacancy was almost the opposite to yours because it came out what in 2012?
yeah,
Yeah, and I tried to read it, I think a year later when I was 13 at the time. So it was a little bit out of my age range. And
yeah,
well, it was the next book from J.K. Rowling, and like I grew up on Harry Potter. This was these books were my life. And so I thought, well, this other book must be also great. And so I started to try and read it, and I think I skimmed through it, and I the only thing I remember reading were the stories of Samantha Mollison and
yeah.
her crush on one of the boys in, was it the Backstreet Boys? Oh, I don't think it ever specifically mentioned
No, but
the
a,
the
a
name.
boy band.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, whatever. And I also read the part where Simon beats up his wife. And I thought, this is different. And
yeah.
I think this is beyond me right now. So I didn't even finish it, and I kind of just put it aside as this odd thing that J.K. Rowling did once. But then last year I listened to it, and I and the reader they have for the Audible is phenomenal. And
Yeah,
also um, I I listened to the whole thing, and it's incredible. It's it's such it reminded me of the brothers Karamazov, because that book is such an incredible character study in like
yeah,
every single one of the characters in the brothers K. You feel like is um, like there's such a perfect encapsulation of a kind of person that you can see yourself in every single character to some level. And unfortunately, in Casual Vacancy, the same is kind of true, because
yeah.
almost all of the characters in Casual Vacancy are kind of horrible. They're
They are, but they're horrible in a way that you can relate to.
Yeah, exactly. They're remarkably human.
Yeah,
And even the worst ones like Fats or Howard you're like, okay, I can actually understand where he's coming from, because I've had like the low points
yeah,
in my life, or the worst things I've done, or like yeah, like these aren't these aren't like Lord Voldemorts. They're not like ultimate evils. They're
yeah,
everyday evils, or like,
yes,
or not even evils,
yeah,
just everyday incredibly flawed people. And um but also there are the best characters in the casual vacancy are the ones who are the most beaten down, like Sukhvinda is
Yeah.
she's like actively trying to kill herself, and she's the and she's and all at the same time being the only person who tried to save a child who don't want to ruin the ending, but well,
No.
if you haven't read the book by now, you never will. So yeah, the
Yeah.
the ending is incredibly sad with the death of a child, the suicide of a young girl, and then that final scene in the funeral was ah yeah I I
The, the,
yeah I
the,
love
the,
that vacancy.
that last time that we hear the umbrella theme,
Yeah,
I cannot read without weeping. I mean, physically weeping. It is so powerful, and if there's a moral to it, and she says it's about morality and mortality, but if there's a moral to it, it's the characters that are flawed but are trying to do the right thing. They're failing because they're living too much inside themselves. And the characters that are flawed and are creating an incredible amount of damage, it's because they're all living inside themselves too much. And where we see redemption, and we see it even with Fats right at the end, where we see redemption, it's because they've opened their eyes and they're looking around them. Such a powerful book.
yeah. I I'm I am well. I'm glad that I didn't finish it as a 13-year-old because I don't think I
Yeah.
would have been able to understand it. But as a 25-year-old, I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is one of her best books.
Yeah.
It's uh yeah. I mean, um J.K. Rowling has yet to miss or like write a bad book yet. And
Yeah.
yeah,
But
I don't think she's ever going to. Uh
no.
yeah.
But there's you're right. She's such an incredible author. But then when you're foolish enough to try and understand how she does it, how is she so good? And you try and deliver an autopsy on a book, she just does it all wrong. I mean, it's partly the reason why I researched J.K. Rowling's life as a sort of a hobby, is to try and understand how this wonderful writer came to be. And you know, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone should not have been published. It broke all the rules. It was about twice too long for a first chapter book for children. It was too long. It had the word philosopher in the title. Uh, it was a fantasy book written by a woman. I mean, there's just it broke all of the rules. Bloomsbury, for much of I think they've dropped the ball in recent years. That the Bloomsbury, as a small sort of boutique publisher, as they were back then, took a real risk. You know, and their first print run, which has been reported incorrectly so many times, but the actual first print run was 1,500 copies. Simultaneous publication of 1,000 paperback books and 500 hardback books. The theory being that any half decent, good children's book published in the late 90s, you could sell 500 hardback books to the British Library Service. Sadly, our library service is nothing like as extensive as it was back in the late 90s. But so they had 500 hardback books for libraries and then 1,000 for children to read if they wanted to. This was a tiny publication. Incidentally, that's why first edition hardback books in good condition are so incredibly expensive. They are hundreds of thousands of pounds worth because they all went to libraries. If somebody managed to get themselves a first edition hardback book, they are as rare as hen's teeth. But yeah, she broke all the rules. The voice she uses to write in is her speaking voice. So if you listen to her being interviewed, or even better, we've had a couple of documentaries where you can hear her chatting to people that she knows, like a sister. The phrasing and the beat of her writing is exactly the same as her spoken voice, which is not literary. Now, her writing is beautiful, but it is not literary. Stephen King famously said that J.K. Rowling had never seen an adjective she didn't like, which is breaking the writing rules. She all of the great writers, A.S. Byatt, Harold Bloom, have criticized her for this non-poetic style because she writes exactly as she speaks. Now, to an ear that isn't used to that sort of Gloucestershire turn of phrase that she's got, it can seem a little bit strange, and I think that added to her appeal. So, we're perfectly normal, thank you very much, is exactly the kind of phrase that she would use, but it sounds quirky. It has an appeal to it, and I think particularly in the American market, that helped enormously. Aside from the fact that many Americans don't really understand the difference between British culture and wizard culture. So, well, yeah, allegedly. So, Christmas crackers, which we have in the UK, are little sort of cardboard tubes with a very small gunpowder charge in them that we have Christmas Day. We pull them apart. There's a paper hat inside and a riddle and a joke. This is a British thing, which Americans read as a wizard thing. The school system, so schoolhouses and prefects and a points competition, is a British school thing. It's not a wizarding thing. The food, treacle tarts and Cornish pasties, and all this is just British cuisine, but it's exotic and sort of wizardly to an American ear.
Mars. I had no idea what a Mars bar was, but I was like, okay,
Yeah.
so that must be like some interplanetary wizard thing.
Yeah.
Nope. Apparently, it's just a British sweet.
That's right. Yeah, it's yeah. That of course that added to its phenomenal appeal in the United States. But what the magic that she has is she can she knows children incredibly well. She can write using her own voice in a manner that is appealing to children. The ideas that she comes up with are appealing, and she can create that magic where you sink into the story, and that's the undefinable bit.
Yeah.
And that's what I was desperate to find out, how you do it. So as soon as I'd finished Casual Vacancy, I moved on to the Harry Potter series. I mean, straight away, as soon as I'd finished, I moved on to that. As millions of other people have been, must be close to 1 billion people now, I'm sure. I fell in love with the series, and I needed to find out how she did it. So I was looking for who had the answers, and there was this strange website called the Hogwarts Professor, where there was this guy who was answering these kinds of questions. This is how she does it. This is how she writes her stories. Using ring theory, using mythological allegories, and amazing insight, Christian symbolism into what she's doing, stuff that I would never have found in a million years. And he'd written a book called Harry Potter's Bookshelf. This was Dr. John Granger's, Osma, who is your father. I'm sure you realise.
Yes. I was, when you said Hogwarts professor, I was like, I think I might know what he's getting, what he's on about. Yeah.
So he wrote Harry Potter's Bookshelf, and he was pushing this Oxford academic quite heavily on the website. A lady called Dr. Beatrice Groves, and she had written a book called Literary Illusion in Harry Potter. So I had a copy of these two books once I'd finished the Harry Potter series. I read these two books, and the wonderful thing about these two books, and I recommend everyone to read them almost side by side, it is that Beatrice concentrates on literary illusions. So this is the literary borrowings that you can find within J.K. Rowling's work, and some of them are eminently obvious. So there is Mrs. Norris, and there's the Austen connection to Mrs. Norris, and some are really quite subtle. So there's the cabinet, the disappearing cabinet, you can find in Northanger Abbey, and Dr. Granger's book, Harry Potter's Bookshelf, as well as introducing lots of borrowings and literary allusions, also sort of teaches you how to read the four different levels of understanding how a story works. But what they did was give me essentially a reading list. So they introduced me to the literary tradition that Rowling was using. So the books that she evidently loved enough to make allusions to within her works, and that essentially opened up the world of English literature to me, which is sort of where I am today. So I like to style myself after one of Austen's literary characters, Emma Woodhouse. So Emma Woodhouse famously is the character that Jane Austen was worried because she didn't think anyone else would like her apart from herself. So she is a wonderfully flawed character who, until her redemption, almost at the end of the book, creates far more harm than she solves. And one of the things she loves to do is she makes reading lists of all the great works, wonderfully, beautifully done reading lists that accurately capture the literary canon, and then she never reads them. So I try and do one better than ever. Emma Woodhouse is I have these lists constructed. Still, the bones of them are from those two books, from Harry Potter's Bookshelves and Literary Illusions. But I have these reading lists that I'm sort of working through at the moment. And then not so long ago, I think only 4 years ago, when the Ichabod was published, a good friend who again I'd corresponded with in J.K. Rowling studies, made a gift of, so all my great literary leaps have been made from people giving me things. Made me a gift of an audiobook, and it was the Ichabod, and I'd never listened to an audiobook before. We have a wonderful station in the UK called BBC Radio 4, which has dramas on, and I listen to a lot of radio dramas. I listen to podcasts, but I'd never listened to an audiobook. And the Ichabod, not the Ichabod, no, it wasn't. It was the Christmas Pig. The Christmas Pig audiobook is so good because it's a little bit like we're shortly going to get the Harry Potter full cast recordings. It was a full cast recording. I'd already read The Christmas Pig, but I enjoyed that audiobook so much. My list is split between text books and audiobooks, and I consume now, on average, 1 audiobook a week and 2 text books. It's
Wow.
um, and still I look at my ever growing to be read list, and I think my audio list is probably good for another 4 or 5 years before I need adding. I keep on adding more to the end of it.
Yeah, that's the terrible thing about books. There's an endless list of good ones. Like
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yes.
yeah, it's kind of like Oz. Like it's great and terrible at
Yeah.
the same time. Yeah, because I've when I was a teenager, I used to go on what I called classics runs,
Yeah.
where I would get a pile of of like old classic books like like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Jules Verne and Mark Twain, and I would just read three or four of them in one go. But then I would kind of get exhausted because I looked at the list of all the classic books I still had to read, and I was like, I haven't even made a dent. I mean,
No.
there's just so many good ones, but I by by this time I have gotten the almost all of the ones that I've heard so much about, and I wanted to at least read them once. Some I do kind of regret reading because because they're classics because they did something that no one had ever done before,
Yeah.
or they were extremely literary. But some of them, like, have you ever read
Ovary.
Madame Bovary?
Yeah. Yes, I have.
I could not stand that book because the main character was it was um such a depressing book
Yeah. I,
with that main character who just did nothing. Well, it wasn't that she did nothing right, she just did nothing.
yeah.
She just she actively did nothing, which apparently um was the original definition of an anti-hero.
Yeah.
It like it it didn't originally mean the uh, a guy who like did who was a hero but in a dark way. No,
Yeah.
it was a main character who did nothing, who like didn't push the story forward at all. And
Yeah.
and by the end of the book, I thought, I could have been reading Austen. I mean, I could have been I could
Yeah.
I like I still haven't read Emma. I
Really?
yeah. So yeah I've and one of my favorite authors is C.S. Lewis, and C.S. and one of my favorite lines from C.S. Lewis is there the two worst things about Austen books are they are too few and too short. And yeah, and I still haven't read Emma, though I've read Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility multiple times and adored them. So I will definitely love Emma once I get to it.
So it's my favorite of the Austen books. Although every time I read an Austen book, they sort of change around a bit. But I think Emma Woodhouse is always going to be my favorite. But because Emma is an anti-hero, is you really don't want to be rooting for her because she's doing the wrong thing, but still you find yourself rooting for her. Um, and I think Austen is so good at um, at writing flawed characters on the periphery, and here she really lets go and has Emma front and center as the protagonist, and it's so good. And you know, there's a redemption arc, and it's a beautiful story. But Madame Bovary, I agree entirely with your assessment, but it's worked its way back into my reread list. I'm a strong believer in rereading. I don't think you can really get a book the first time through, and it wasn't on my reread list until I read A Dance to the Music of Time.
What's what's that about?
So this is it's a long series of books. So it's 12 relatively short books, but it's 12 books spanning a group of people from the 1930s through to the late 60s, early 70s in the United Kingdom. Have you read Remembrance of Things Past, Proust?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's sort of the British version of that, but it's written very differently. So Proust is all about um, the interior mind. So there's a very famous scene in the first book of Remembrance of Things Past, where the protagonist tastes a madeleine, which is a little French cake that has been dipped in tea, and this reminds him of the last time he had that as a child, and it sort of transports him back in time. And he's in his childhood bed, and he can hear his parents arguing. But the whole time, as he's remembering these past events, is you're trapped in the protagonist's head and his deepest thoughts. Um, Dance to the Music of Time is nothing like that, and it really reminded me up until sort of book 5, so nearly halfway through, of Madame Bovary, because the protagonist, Nicholas, does nothing. He doesn't advance the story in any way. And you're constantly waiting for him to do something. And it was book 5, book 6. I thought, I'm reading this wrong. He isn't a protagonist. He's an observer. You just need to park yourself on his shoulder and see what he's seeing. Nothing was inside his head. Everything was exteriorized. And once I sort of understood that's the way you need to read that book, I fell in love with it. It's a wonderful series, but it really ought to have a handbook of, look, this is what you need to expect. This is how you need to read the book. And you can now concentrate on the other characters and what they're doing, sat on this chap's shoulder, just observing what he's observing. So I'm going to give Madame Bovary another go. It's found its way onto my reread list. And I think on the current schedule, it's going to be sometime around about next April.
Well, definitely shoot me an email next year
Yeah,
if it's worth the reread, because yeah, I very rarely, like, a book has to be absolutely fantastic for me to reread it. Uh,
yeah,
and I mean, all the Harry Potter books and all the Cormoran Strike books fall into that category because
yeah,
I've growing up, I read the Harry Potter books multiple times, but I listened to the audiobook performed by Jim Dale, I think literally countless times. It was just a constant going back through in until I had an almost encyclopedic knowledge
yeah,
of the books and just a single phrase in Jim Dale's voice would bring back an entire book, an entire a scene, a chapter, anything. And my brother Timothy and I would often um, we would confuse strangers oftentimes by just saying a random phrase in a British accent and just starting to laugh because we were just we were both remembering this scene that made no sense to anyone else, but it was such a indelible part of our childhood that yeah, even today, if I'm on a phone call to my brother who is now married with two kids, I'll say I'll say something, when two Neptunes appear in the sky, and he'll start laughing because he can remember that specific scene from Harry Potter book three. and and yeah, it's, I mean, the fact that that J.K. Rowling like gave that to so many children and now
Yeah,
adults is, well, it's one of the many reasons um I I want to write books, and I have written books because the well, you were talking about the magic of fiction where you can um, it if the book is good enough, it becomes real, and
yeah,
it's it's like falling into Riddle's diary. Like you are actually in the book, and
yeah,
and when you finish it, yeah, you know when you finish a book, and all you can do is like lean back and sigh,
yeah,
and just that feeling of like completion, and but also that you've it's also, I mean, to me it's also a kind of a sad feeling because I didn't really want to finish it. Like I wanted to stay.
yeah. Rowling talks about the act of reading as a partnership between the author and the reader, because there's a limit to what you can put on the page. So the author will describe um, a tree and a river and fields, and if they're feeling like flights of fancy, that there may be birds twittering in the background. But the sound of the brook and the shake of the leaves on the tree and the dappling of the sun coming through and hitting that stream, you can't put that on the paper. That comes from the reader's imagination. And without the one or the other, then it's not that immersive experience. So I think you need to be a good writer to put someone in that frame of mind, but also to get the full experience, you need to be a good reader, and reading takes practice. So when I read Casual Vacancy, that took me to finish that book maybe 3 weeks, and I was reading at just about normal speaking pace, so slowly reading. You know, I wasn't quite, but I could have been tracing my finger along, sort of underneath each line. Um, and I wouldn't have done that if it hadn't really hooked me almost from the first page. Because it's an investment in time. Now I am at so the latest instalment of Robert Galbraith, the the Hallmark Man. I completed in less than a week. So this was maybe 5 days, and they were working days as well. I'm envious of many people who say the new Galbraith's out. I've taken 3 days off work. My job is such that I can't do that. But even so I'm much because of the practice that I've had. I'm much quicker at doing it, and I think that practice has also helped me to to immerse myself. So it's expanded my imagination so that I can add to what the author is putting down on the page. And it is a skill. Reading is a skill, and it does require patience and practice. But my word, it rewards all the effort that you put into it.
Yeah. Like, well, as I as like as I've gotten older, I realized that I took for granted the insane concept of imagination, which I'm still like every every day I struggle with it because the concept of like you can hear a sound inside your head that you made up, but like you can actually hear it, but there's no sound. And the and just just thinking about that is it's yeah, I'm still blown away by it. Because like as a kid, I was like, oh yeah, that's just how it works. But then
Yeah.
I'm like, but how does that work? Like
Yeah.
that's actual magic. That's
Yeah.
it's something that and um and now that I'm writing books, I I'm every time I sit down to write, I'm terrified that it'll be gone. Like my imaginative power will be completely gone and I won't be able to put anything on the page because it's a blank page. So how could I put anything on it? Like how could I create something on that? And but I actually the first episode of this podcast was with my writing mentor, John David Mann, who's written about I think 40 novels.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's done it a lot. And 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 we had a conversation about where the creative faculty comes from and like will it ever run dry? And he said that he said something that I agree with completely, which is that it doesn't really come from you. It comes through you and you have to work very hard to like attune yourself to to that, but um it's coming from like from the infinite, from God, from something far greater than you. And that is always a comfort to me because I know that's never going to run out. And all I have to do is is like tune myself to the best of my abilities. And people like J.K. Rowling and Dostoevsky and Austen, they've dedicated their lives to being the perfect tuning fork for this for this creative force that is, I mean, it's like a good book is genuinely breathtaking.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. It genuinely is, and it's immortal. I mean, you speak of Dostoevsky. Now, Dostoevsky wrote in a specific period in time, a very creative period of time in Russia, but a very specific one. And yet, as you say, the characters that he draws on, I mean, they're just people. They are people that you can recognize. And what's remarkable with Dostoevsky, I think even more so than Rowling, because he writes these epics, is that the characters do evolve, but it's so subtle that they're recognizably the same people on the first page as they are on the last page. And but you understand how they've got to where they are.
Yeah. And in in the Brothers Karamazov, I it was kind of funny that the characters I disliked the most were the characters with a
Don't
character.
say don't say Zosima, please.
No, I adore those. I don't think anyone cannot adore Zosima. But yeah, yeah, the character with my name, I actually yeah, I I loved him, but I was always so much more um I couldn't get enough of Ivan and Alyosha,
Yeah.
but I despised Dmitri because he was the most like me. And and because because like his entire character was this man who understood that he was a slave to his passions, and he
Yeah,
still and he so clearly understood it, but he still did it. And I was like, you like because like that's the thing like that's that's one of my many flaws that I struggle with most, and seeing that perfectly encapsulated in a character
yeah,
was it was uh, I was like, okay, the reason I hate this character is because he struggles with the he is he is um he is dealing with something that I struggle with, but in a really in a extremely unhealthy way. So I'm like, dude, you understand what you're doing wrong. Why aren't you changing it? Yeah, it was that entire book. I think it's like an 800-page book, and
yeah,
I've I think I read it in like 3 days because I just could not. It was um it was a genuine. It was like an actual page turner. Like
yeah,
um I was staying up late. I was getting up early. I was like, this book is out of this world. Or
yes,
well, it's not out of this world. It's like it's exactly this world.
yeah. For me, it's the beau ideal of the Russian novel, and I think it's disappointing, certainly in the UK, that it's as little known as it is. War and Peace is always the Russian novel
Mm,
in the UK, and great as it is, um, I think I look on War and Peace as being more of a writing achievement than a great novel.
mm.
To manage to keep all those threads together into an organized story is an incredible feat. But it isn't as great a story as the brothers are.
Yeah, I actually I have yet to finish War and Peace because the beginning it is so dense
Yeah.
that I have yet to get through it. So on my next classics run, I've got to read War and Peace and Emma. I'm sorry, I'm not going to reread Madame Bovary. I, unless when you reread it and that changing of perspectives absolutely opens up a new world. In that case, I might try and reread it, but I'm still recovering from from
No,
the
I
from
failed to complete War and Peace in print. So my tip for War and Peace is audiobook. So I read it on audiobook, and that has the advantage when you're flagging, the narrator doesn't care. The narrator carries on, and they sort of push you through that wall.
yeah. It would be really funny to have a an audiobook of a very boring book where even the narrator says, "Oh,
Yeah, enough now.
I gotta take a break," and there's like a 2 hour break of just the sound of him drinking tea and just, ah, this is so this sucks. And then okay, let's go. Let's go. Okay. Well,
I'm
at least we're on
sure.
the same page.
I'm. I'm sure off microphone that must happen all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, a couple of the children's books that I've written, I've also done a voice recording version,
Okay.
and it's been really fun because I love performing, and 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 growing up on audiobooks, it was kind of a dream come true to be able to do it, but it's kind of exhausting to like try to like express the story to its fullest, every single word of the entire book,
Yeah.
um and it was hard enough for a children's book that's like 50 pages long versus Hallmark Man, which is like 900 pages.
It is, yeah. So they've got a guy called Robert Glenister, who is the narrator. And my first reread of a Robert Galbraith book is always the audiobook.
Mm.
Um, so there are some people that sort of mix and match. They'll read the text and then find where they are in the audiobook and carry on with the audiobook and then go back to text. And I can't do that. It's just too confusing for my poor little brain. So when it first comes out, I read the text, and then my first reread will be the audiobook. And uh, so Hallmark Man has had mixed reviews, and I still think it's a great book. But I think again, it's this partnership thing. I read it wrong. So I working so much with the Hogwarts professor, and the other guys in the fandom about what we were expecting, how we were going to analyze it, is I forgot to try and drop myself inside the book, which is what I like to do. And so I was reading it as an academic exercise rather than a story. And so that's what I tried to recapture on my first reread on the audiobook, is to sink myself inside it, but it's the wrong way around, and I must be careful next time to discipline myself.
Mm.
That when the book comes out, I just enjoy the story, and then you can, wow, that was wonderful. Okay, how did she do this? Can we understand the ring theory, and what were the illusions she was trying for in this book?
Yeah, this is kind of a difficult book to just sit back and enjoy because it's well, it's not nearly as difficult to read as Career of Evil, where there's just a bunch of women being butchered every other page. But yeah, it's Hallmark Man a is an intense book, but it's also got out of the seven books, it now has two of my all-time favorite Cormoran Strike scenes, which one is the Christmas party
Yeah,
with uh with with Strike over at Lucy's being hunted by Marguerite, and that was it was perfect. And then the final scene, which has been led up to for 7 books. I heard people were like disappointed by it, but I thought it was fantastic. Like it made perfect sense in the story where like Strike professes his love, and of course Robin doesn't profess hers because it um, 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 because of all the stuff that's gone before.
yeah,
The um, yeah, it just the catharsis of Strike finally like uh, just throwing away all his plans and like okay, I'm gonna say it finally because like at the end of book 6, I thought that was going to be the declaration of love,
yes.
but Strike even weaseled out of that one, and
And so did Robin. They both weaseled out of it. Now Robin has got PTSD, so I think I can understand why she's acting so out of character and ignoring the obvious, because that at the end of book 7, at the end of book 7, it was obvious. So Strike had said um, that the I told her that Charlotte knows that I'm in love with you. Now that's as close to a declaration of love as you can get. Robin ignores this, but she's suffering from a stress related mental illness, and you can see that harming her all the way through the book. So thank God we've got what we think is going to be a sweary therapist. She's going to get some help in book 9.
Huh?
Strike is also acting out of character all the way through Hallmark Man. And I think you've hit the nail on the head when you talk about catharsis, because I think that scene on the stairway was cathartic for Strike. This is what he's spent the whole book building up to. And he spent the whole book not being himself. So he's investigating cases in the wrong way for the wrong reason, which is not Strike. He's not that interested in justice, only insofar as the investigation can advance his relationship with Robin and try and break up Robin and Murphy. That's not Strike. And I think he's acting out of character because he had this desperate need to, in plain language, declare himself to Robin such that she understood. And if that really was catharsis on the stairs at the end of book 8, then hopefully book 9 will see Strike back to himself, because it's normal Strike that Robin is in love with. It's not the devious, manipulating Strike that we saw in book 8.
Yeah, the well, yeah, I called Hallmark Man book 7, but it's book 8. Sorry.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Yeah, I kind of I guess I didn't count Ink Black Heart because I do have some resentment towards Ink Black Heart because the murderer and the main villain is a boy in his early 20s who is a cellist. And I was like, why am I the villain? Why am I the murderer of this book? Like Gus Upcott, one of them of the most vile of the villains is like, why is it so similar to me? I like this is a great book, but come on, like Joanne.
So,
Oh,
so the host of the Three Broomsticks podcast, Irvin Capeman, has a continuing resentment against J.K. Rowling for her hatred towards accountants. And of course, he's an accountant, and he takes that very personally. If you look in the Galbraith series for any mention of Wales or the Welsh, so Robert Galbraith really doesn't like Wales or the Welsh, but I try not to let that affect my my appreciation of the books. So there was in Ink Black Heart. So in Ink Black Heart, Cormoran talks about the college, saying that in this Cambridge college, when the college was set up, they had rules about not letting any students in who were physically impaired. And of course, they come to see a chap that was in a wheelchair. And also, he says, they don't allow anyone in who's Welsh. And then Strike says, of course, any normal person would agree with him about the Welsh. But
oh man. And in Lethal White, Geraint Wynn,
yeah,
with his incredibly over the top Welsh accent. Like, well, where do you fit in then? And yeah, he's a sleaze, he's a perv,
yeah.
he's horrible. So yeah, the most Welsh character in all the books is not a good lookout for the Welsh community.
No. And then again, in Troubled Blood, we have that recording in a pub that was completely ruined by the off-key singing of Welsh rugby supporters.
Oh, man. I didn't realize that. Man, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm surprised you're still a fan of Rowling after all this abuse.
Oh, well, Rowling grew up in Gloucestershire. So Gloucestershire is right on the Welsh borders. In fact, from her house, if you look west from her house, you see the dip of the Wye Valley where the River Wye is, and just the other side of that, you can see Wales. Chepstow, which is her closest town, is just across the bridge from her village of Tuts Hill, and Chepstow is in Wales, so she's in walking distance of Wales. And I think anywhere where you're close to a border, there's a natural rivalry, sort of home and away supporters, our team, their team.
Mhm.
So I think that's just a natural result of proximity.
I, I I suppose. Well, yeah, I'm on the border with Texas, and
Okay.
almost every Oklahoman that I know has a fierce rivalry with with the Texans, which is kind of uncomfortable for me because I was born in Texas. So I'm I'm
Okay.
I'm a filthy half breed between between Texas and Oak and Oklahoma, and I'm kind of like that unpopular kid in the schoolyard who's like, can't we all just get along? And no, no, we can't. We must do battle. And like, oh, okay, fine, but I kind of like you both, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I'm the same. So I was actually born in England, but we moved to this town, and my family moved here when I was 6. So I've spent all my life here essentially, and I guess I'm adopted Welsh.
Mhm. Well, yeah, I was going to ask because you don't have a Welsh accent, you have an upper class accent. It sounds like, and
Uh,
um,
well, yeah. My family, the Jeffrey family, move around quite a lot. So my grandfather Jeffrey, uh, my father, uh, and his mother, my grandmother Jeffrey, were both born in Michigan.
oh,
Because my grandfather Jeffrey emigrated to Canada before the First World War to work in the mines. So his family's from Cornwall, a famous mining county, same Cornwall that Strike was born in. So he moved to Canada as a miner, joined the Canadian engineers in the First World War, did his First World War thing, then came back to Canada uh, at a and about the same time, Henry Ford was starting his first factory in Detroit, a little place just outside Detroit called Highland Park. He moved down there to work in the factory because the money was much better. Met his wife, my grandmother, who was a nurse in Detroit, and then had my father and his brother.
hmm.
And then the Great Depression came in the late 20s, early 30s. And then he moved back to Cornwall to help his father, my great grandfather, with the farm that they had, and stayed there. My father grew up on the farm, but didn't really like farming all that much. So he got an apprenticeship at the local power station. And then he moved to England, which is where I was born, and then here to Wales, to the local power station here. So yeah, the family sort of moves around a little bit, but this really, I've lived for a few years in Bristol, but other than that, I've spent my whole life here.
Do you speak Welsh?
A little bit. So it's compulsory education in our comprehensive school, which is sort of our high school. For the first 3 years, so sort of 11, 12, 13, um, we were taught Welsh, but this isn't really a very Welsh speaking area. So almost everyone here communicates in English all the time.
So, and and you said you're on the coast of South Wales. So
Yeah.
so in places farther north like Cardiff, is does like everyone speak Well,
Yeah. So Cardiff is our capital, and it is down here in the south.
oh,
So it's just a little bit further east. I mean, it's about a day's walk, but it's not that far away. And that's it's a city. It's multicultural. It's almost all English speaking. As you go further west to where my brother's now living in Pembrokeshire, so out to the west, it's much more Welsh speaking. And when you go further north, past what we call the Welsh valleys and the valleys with the big coal mining area, as you go north past that, most people speak Welsh. But it's getting a bit of a resurgence now because in primary education, um, sort of our junior schools, the best schools seem to be Welsh medium schools. So even a lot of English families are sending their kids for their first school to get taught in Welsh. And then, of course, they become bilingual. It's much easier for them to carry on speaking it.
wow. Yeah, I've always loved the Welsh accent because it's, it's, well, it's one of the most musical accents I've ever heard. And as a as a ch as a child, I listened to this fantasy series called The Chronicles of Prydain.
Oh yeah,
Have you read them?
I haven't read them, but I have heard of them.
Yeah, and they're a fantasy series that are all that are all based on Welsh um, folk tales
Yeah,
and mythology, and it takes place in the mythical country of Prydain, which is just Wales, like ancient Wales, and and almost all of the characters in the audiobook have like have 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 different kinds of Welsh accents, and I loved it um, so much that I I I I recently I recently wrote a children's book, and I wanted to do a audiobook excerpt to send around to people, and for some reason I decided to do it in a Welsh accent,
okay.
which makes no sense at all because it's a story about a American boy who stows away on a sailing ship that goes after a pirate. But I was in some kind of weird quixotic mood, and so I tried my best to do to do a Welsh accent, and um, I'm not sure how many people listen to it, so I don't know how I did, but maybe I'll have to send it to you and and see if I butchered the accent, or hey, maybe I did a great job. I don't know.
Well, there's Wales is like the rest of the UK in that we have a lot of accents, which you probably won't get unless you get your ear in. But we're so Wales has two, maybe three primary accents. So North Wales is very different to South Wales, and they're both a little bit different to West Wales. So North Wales is much higher pitched, and you sort of speak from the back of the throat like that. This would be North Wales, and then South Wales is much deeper. There we are. This is a South Wales accent, and West Wales is almost like West Country is uh, almost like a Cornish or a Devon burr to it, and there's lots of relations between the west of England and the west of Wales. But even more than that is I can tell someone who grew up in Cardiff, which is less than a day's walk away. Um, Cardiff is a very different accent to the rest of South Wales. largely because it's a port-based city, so it's imported a lot of different accents into it, and it's hack like that, hack the lack in Cardiff Arms Pack. And then there's Barry, which is a small town sort of attached to Cardiff, has a different accent again. But Llantwit Major, my town, there's other towns, Cowbridge and Bridgend. I can tell the different accents between those as well. It's a very localized thing. So there's Welsh accents and there's Welsh accents, but the stories of Wales that have survived to us, and I think the Prydain series draws on a lot of those. There's a book called The Mabingonian, which was written in Welsh in the sort of late medieval period before Wales was completely subsumed by England. And there's just hints in them of stories of Merlin and hints of Arthur. There's the bard Taliesin, and there's the stories of the dragons of Wales. That's why we have on our flag we have a dragon. But such a rich heritage we've got here.
Well, in um, that that Cardiff accent you just imitated sounded a lot like the Scouse accent, like the Liverpudlian accent.
Yeah, another port city, and the North Wales accent can sort of merge into that Scouse accent as well as you go further east along that sort of north coast.
Yeah, that's I mean the like for how small the UK is in comparison to the States, there are just so many accents. So, like you go one town over and there's another accent where in the United States we have a lot of accents, but it's like an entire state
Yeah.
has this accent where the I I do kind of regret that I grew up in the Northeast and Northwest, where I have the flat Pennsylvania, Oregon accent, which is kind of boring. But if I'd grown up in Oklahoma, I could have had that deep Southern drawl that is just I love talking to born and bred Texans and Oklahomans because the yeah that Southern accent is it's beautiful. It's
it is. I have a friend who grew up in Virginia, who has a beautiful accent. But then again, to a UK ear, everyone sounds like a cowboy.
I one of the things I find most insulting and most amusing about Robert Glenister is
Yeah,
whenever he does an American accent, it's just so brutal. And
yeah,
it just hurts me to my core. It's like is this how people th is this how we sound to people? I think so. And it's I mean,
yeah.
oh, uh, it just hurts my heart.
Yeah, but bear in mind, we had to put up with Dick Van Dyke pretending to have a Cockney London accent for all of our childhood.
I mean, of all the terrible accents, that was the best. Like it was the worst and the best at the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
time.
It's so bad it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, oh, Dick Van Dyke. I've been recently re watching some of the Dick Van Dyke show, and oh man, that is like some of the best stuff because apparently Dick Van Dyke he started out as a mime in in local theaters, and so that's why his face is plastic.
yeah.
It can just do anything, and yeah, it's well. Getting back to Harry Potter, I asked you to send me a headshot for this pot for this podcast, and the one you sent is your mugshot from Azkaban, as, as I see. And I've got to say, um, you may be the happiest resident of Azkaban ever, because you're grinning, and I didn't know that was possible, like surrounded by Dementors, but you seem to be
Clearly,
invincible.
the Dementors have driven me to madness. That's what's occurred there.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah. Oh, so you're like in tandem with Bellatrix Lestrange. You just
Yeah. No, I like to think more Sirius Black, but less of the manic laughing, more of the grinning.
Huh? Okay. Yeah. If have you ever wondered what your Patronus would be?
Well, I did the quiz that they had on Pottermore, and it gave me an osprey, which I was quite pleased with. So that's a bird of prey, but it lives on the coast, which pleases me immensely, and it hunts for fish.
Mine was, yeah, I took that I took that same test, and mine was a sparrowhawk. So
Ah, okay,
I was pretty pleased with that. Like
yeah,
it's a small bird of prey, and then, yeah, that kind of made sense. Though I always when when I imagined myself actually going to Hogwarts, I I always wanted a fox as as my as as my as my as my Patronus. But apparently, according to the actual lore, you can't choose your Patronus. It just appears as it is.
yeah.
So yeah,
So a little bit like the wand, it chooses you rather than you choosing it.
yeah, yeah. So an osprey for you, and a sparrowhawk for me. Huh? No, I can live with that. I mean,
Yeah, two raptors.
yeah, a a friend of my brothers took that test, and he got a rhinoceros. Wow. And it definitely fit his personality, but I was like, Man, uh, you got a giant pachyderm, as like what a defender that is to blast a giant
Yes.
glowing silver rhinoceros out of your wand.
A little bit unsubtle to send off his messages, though. That's the only thing I would worry about.
Yeah, a a human voice coming out of that stampeding towards you, like, okay, I don't know, never contact me again. I don't send an owl. Send something else. Um, oh, I've always wondered this, and it's never been confirmed in the books, but um, do you think that Dumbledore was an animagus?
Oh,
Um,
I
because
don't know.
because the one clue that always stuck with me that he can turn into an owl is um, when when Harry wakes up at the end of Philosopher's Stone, and he tells Dumbledore, "Oh, um, did um, um, did you get the owl we sent to you?" And he said, we must have met halfway." And I thought, is that like just a very is that just Dumbledore joking around, or is that him literally saying that they flew past each other? Uh, and I thought, I mean, yeah, I don't know, but I I personally th think that he is, because he died at like over 100, and
Yeah,
I feel like he would have put in the time to have that power, though he never uses it in like times of need. Though I'm not sure any situation in the books where he would have come out better if he was an owl, or
no.
some other animal, but I don't know, but I think so.
It's an intriguing thought. I mean, you're right. He had a lot of time, but he's never really been idle, and he strikes me as the kind of person that if he's going to do anything, there would be a point to it,
That's true.
unless it's a knitting pattern, of course.
He does well. I mean, there's always a point to knitting patterns. That's
That's right.
world a more beautiful place. Um, and uh, and people think that his Patronus is a phoenix, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's what his tomb like came out of his tomb like a giant silver phoenix.
Yeah.
Because we never see it in his life, but that seems to make sense with him as
Yes. And of course, there's the family affinity with phoenixes.
yeah. Oh yeah, the I I stopped watching the Fantastic Beasts movie after the second one, but are there are there four now?
Uh, th- three. I think it finished on the third.
Okay. And
Yeah.
and in the third one, his like nephew has a phoenix, or is it his grandson or like,
Yeah. Yes. So it's his nephew. It's Aberforth's son.
right.
Yeah. Yes. It was all a little confusing. I think there's the bones of a good story there, and I just hope we get to read it someday.
Yeah, I after Cursed Child, I didn't want anything more from Harry Potter unless it was only from Rowling. Because
Yeah.
the fact that they made Cursed Child canon, even though she barely had any, like, she approved it, but she didn't write it, and it
Yeah.
was very clear that she didn't write it because it wasn't that good. uh it was, yeah, I didn't even finish it because I was like, this is not J.K. Rowling.
So that's a very the story of Cursed Child, I think, is yet to come out in full. Although they've brought out a very glossy book, how Cursed Child came to be, which I think misses for me the key story, because the very first press releases we got when it was announced there was going to be a Harry Potter theatre production had the producers saying it was going to be this um, minimalist uh, show um, with no special effects. It was going to be about Harry's years in the cupboard before he found out he was a wizard. It's going to be a psychological drama, an intimate production, and that must have been what the idea that was sold to Rowling, because then they got the press releases saying this is going to be the theatre production.
Mhm.
And I'm really interested to understand how that morphed into what is in effect Deathly Hallows on ice. And by all accounts, I'm being completely unfair because I haven't seen the production, and I will at some point go to London and see the production, and it is supposed to be a wonderful experience.
Mm.
But it's not a J.K. Rowling story.
Yeah, it's a fan fiction.
Yeah, it's a fan fiction, and how it came from what J.K. Rowling agreed to do, which was a small scale, intimate, small production, into what we got. I'd be fascinated to understand that.
Yeah, yeah. I've never written any Harry Potter fan fiction, but I always have. um I think me and my brother planned one when we were about like 10 and 12, and it was about well, obviously us going to Hogwarts, and but it was the one thing I remember specifically was it was about um well I don't think I actually self-inserted myself. I just made a character that was basically me, go to Hogwarts. And uh, as a child, I had a very severe stutter. I still have one, but it's actually far better than it used to be because I could in my early life I was constantly stuttering. And I thought it would be really fun to send a stutterer to Hogwarts where he stuttered so much that he couldn't pronounce spells. So he actually couldn't do magic. And so he found out about nonverbal spells. And so he mastered nonverbal spells earlier than anyone else because he couldn't speak the spells. And I thought that would be such uh, a a fun thing. So I might one day just write that fan fiction.
I think you should. I think that would be fascinating to read.
Yeah, because there there are some spells that apparently you can't do non-verbally, like the Killing Curse has never been a non-verbal spell, and I wonder, can you cast a Patronus non-verbally? Like, are there some spells that are so powerful that you have to speak them? And I would love to explore that in a story. Though every single Harry Potter fan fiction I've read, I've hated because they usually butcher it.
Yeah.
They they don't bring something good to the world. They usually just either bring something smutty or s- or something that's not nearly on the same level, or even the same world as Rowling. But I think I'll give it a try.
Well, I understand that a fan fiction is currently rushing to the top of the New York Times bestseller list. So, Alchemized was is basically fan fiction that has been reworded to avoid any trademark infringement. So, this is again, as I understand, a smutty do they call it Dramione, a Draco Hermione romance?
Yeah, that is most of what fan fiction is, oh, I wonder what would happen if this character hooked up with this character, and it's like, you're come, come on, guys. Yeah, there's
There, there are some things that are probably best left in the subconscious.
yeah, and buried under, yeah, there's one of the most famous Harry Potter fan fictions is this one called My Immortal, which is a combination of vampires. It's basically a combination of Twilight and Harry Potter, which is a horrendous combination, which is offensive to all things good and holy, and just at 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 uh, uh, at all. And I actually only read it because this girl I had a had a crush on suggested it to me, and being young and in love, I thought, "Yeah, I'll read this," and I resented her forever for uh for suggesting it. It wasn't her fault. It was mine, but I could have done without that fan fiction in my brain.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. So I haven't read Twilight yet, although I have read um, Suzanne Collins, uh, and that's again, it's incredibly powerful. So um, I've started I've started to read young adult and children's fiction that escaped me when I was that age, either because it hadn't been written yet or it was just unfashionable. So the period when I was of the right age to read Lewis, it was just unfashionable. I think it was probably too obviously Christian to be fashionable for us young geeks to read. But Lewis, the Narniad is just amazing. So I'm so glad I went back to read those. I read the Suzanne Collins because she had a new book coming out this year. So I went back and I read her whole canon, so Gregor the Overlander and her later works. Um, and they're incredibly powerful. If I think again, I'm of the age now where I'm reading young adult fiction as a parent would read it, which is strange because I didn't really do that for Harry Potter. But with Suzanne Collins, with her later books, I'm thinking that this is really quite bloodthirsty for children to read.
Yeah, the final few Gregor books,
Yeah,
especially the Code of Claw,
yeah,
it it gets gruesome. And yet, and I still have problems with the ending of the final book because I I really wish that Gregor stayed in the
yeah,
in the Underland. It it made sense that he didn't, but I was like Luxa's there and
yeah,
all this stuff you've done to save the Underland, but but you went back up. So yeah. I mean, it was yeah, it was difficult, but um yeah, it's a very bloody book, but I realized that a lot of the books I loved as a child were surprisingly gruesome,
yeah,
like the Redwall series, which I adored almost as much as the Harry Potter books growing up, is are incredibly violent.
yeah,
Like it's just a bunch of anthropomorphic an animals killing each other for like 300 pages, and there's a bunch of lovely songs and food and adventures and puzzles, but also there's like there's people getting their heads cut off and getting
yeah,
split in two, and I was like, yeah, I and it didn't seem violent to me as a kid. It just seemed, I think it was because it was because they were animals, so it wasn't as scary as like a human person getting their head cut off, but um it was still quite graphic.
yeah. I mean, Hunger Games is and again the detail of the injuries and the mutilation is quite graphic. It reminded me very much um, uh, of the Iliad of Homer, and again you sort of get that almost relentless, gruesome, gruesome violence. Um, and I'm sure if I was reading that as a teen, even a young teen, probably I'd have thought it was brilliant. But as an adult, you're reading it thinking, especially as I've just finished the Narniad, I just think C.S. Lewis would never write this.
Yeah, C.S. Lewis. I mean, I think the only gore I can remember from the from Lewis was at the beginning of the last battle when when Jewel gores a Calorman to death, and they actually show it in the illustration, which is kind of this gigantic
Okay.
in in this guy's chest. But that moment is um, the the King of Narnia. I forget his name, but him and Jewel they kill these two men, and then they immediately are like, "What have I done?" And and they like give themselves up. So it it was a it. it it was a violent moment, but it almost seemed to be Lewis saying this is horribly wrong
Yeah.
and should never be done. And yeah, and so and so yeah, like that one moment was kind of the catalyst for his entire series, which is yeah, there's there are battles, but not
No,
gold.
and there's jeopardy, but there's nothing so sort of vividly descriptive as there is in Collins. But um, I guess what she has to do, which Lewis and to a lesser extent Rowling didn't have to do, is she's competing against digital entertainment. I mean, video games and online videos and even films tend to be more violent now than they were
Mhm.
even 30 years ago.
Yeah. So so when you read Narnia for the first time, did you have a standout favorite of the books?
I think the first and the last. So Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and the Last Battle.
Yeah.
But I read them in publication order, and I'm sort of glad I did rather than chronological order.
Uh,
Um, and this is what I like to do anyway. If I'm reading a series, I'd rather read them in the order they were written in, even if chronologically they work slightly different.
mm,
Because Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe explains quite nicely exactly what's going on, which you don't get in The Magician's Nephew.
no. Yeah, yeah, I used to think that because The Magician's Nephew has the birth of Narnia, you got to start there. But
Yeah,
then but then my sister actually talked me into like you should read The Magician's Nephew last because it's such a um because if you read it first and you've never read the rest of the series, you don't understand anything that's going on, and it's very confusing. But if you read it after the last battle, after Narnia has ended, it's this wonderful return to
yeah,
to the world, and you understand everything. And the and I don't like to finish the Chronicles of Narnia with the last battle because that was such a hard book for me to get through because
yeah,
the final part was so wonderful, but the first part where everyone was dying and Narnia
yeah,
was being crushed and it's just devastation and despondency. I was like, this is horrible.
yes,
And that final chapter further up and further in was such a perfect ending, but it was like, come on, man.
yeah. So
To was
I,
such a trial.
I think a chronological reading would work for a reread, and I haven't got it's in my reread pile. I liked it that much, but I haven't got to a reread yet. Um, but I think lots of publishers have been misled by C.S. Lewis himself. So he was asked a question in what order should you read these books, and Lewis replied, you should read it in chronology order rather than publication order. So lots of compilation editions now publish in that order, which would confuse me if it was my first reading. But I'm convinced that Professor Lewis meant for a reread, this is the order that you should read them in. This is the order of the chronology, but not for a first time reading. It's got to be publication order.
Yeah. Yeah. My favorite by far is the horse and his boy because well the duo of Shasta and Bree
Yeah,
I don't think has ever been um, I don't think I've ever experienced a better fantasy duo than
yeah,
then
it's a great buddy story, isn't it?
yeah, and only it's the only book that happens only in Narnia or in the world of Narnia, and yeah, it's so immersive into
Yeah,
into the story of Calormen and then Archenland and Narnia, and yeah, it was yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. It's um, you can certainly see the appeal, and again, in order of publication, you know, there would have been kids dreaming of what would it be like to live in Narnia. Then, well, this is the perfect book for them. This is what it's like living in Narnia.
Yeah, so like chronologically, it's book three, right?
Yeah,
It just happens like right after because it technically happens during the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
that's right, because the kingship is still active. Yeah,
And during that golden age of
yeah.
Narnia, and yeah, do uh do you have a do you have a favorite Harry Potter book?
Yes. Deathly Hallows.
Yeah,
Deathly Hallows is just so majestic. It's and it does a lot of difficult things really quite easily. So of course it's the denouement of the series. It delivers the Harry's final doubts and then ultimate perfection, redemption, conclusion. But it's delivered as a quest and then a battle. And so again, John talks about this and sort of the levels of reading, and this is the perfect book to sort of encapsulate that. So the story is a quest and then a battle. Um, but it isn't really. That's sort of the MacGuffin. That's what puts the characters where you want the characters to be. Um, it it also manages to, because it's the series is written as this monumental ring cycle. It casts back, so you have this aged dragon at the end of its life that's been broken and trapped in the bottom of Gringotts as the final dragon of the series. With then you look back at book one and we see this newly hatched, brand new dragon.
I never thought of that. Oh,
That just wonderful, that wonderful reflection. And then of course, I mean, where else do we see a dragon?
right in the middle.
Goblet of Fire. Yeah, when these are breeding dragons. These are dragons that have just produced an egg in the middle of their life. So it's just there's so many really quite difficult things so seamlessly. Um, it must have been a real challenge to write that book, as well as, of course, a wrench, because that, you know, at the point she wrote it, that was the end of the line for Harry and her. She produced a documentary essentially about the finishing of publication of Deathly Hallows, and we actually see her in the bedroom of the Hotel Balmoral as she types the final page of the manuscript,
Mm.
and it's yeah, incredible thing to watch. A Year in the Life, I think the name of the documentary, but that's you can find it on YouTube, and it's well worth watching.
I've got
But yeah, such an achievement.
yeah to to make the last book of a seven books series that satisfying and
Yeah.
that powerful. Yeah, because yeah, I well, I think Prisoner of Azkaban is my favorite, with Deathly Hallows a close second, because Deathly Ha- Deathly Hallows has a moment in the final act which is one of my one of my favorites in the entire series. It's the scene in the room of requirement when Percy comes, and it's so awkward, and Fleur turns to uh to Lupin, is like, so ow ease little Teddy, and he's like, speak, and then Percy bursts out like, I was a fool, I was an idiot, I was a pompous prat, I was a and then Fred says, ministry loving, family disowning, power hungry moron. And Percy says, yes, I I I was. In and then Fred, he who ever since Percy has broken from the family, has wanted nothing to do with him, and says he's a worthless prat. He forgives him, and says, like, well, you can't say it better than that, and sh and holds out his hand, and that um, yeah, that act of forgiveness was always so devastating to me. Like, just yeah, it was wonderful. And it was kind of the perfect end, because Fred dies like 10 minutes later, uh, while laughing at Percy's first joke in like 10 years. And it's yeah, it just yeah. I think the only thing that makes me prefer Prisoner of Azkaban is also one one moment, which um well, I love Prisoner of Azkaban, because it was the book in the series that really expanded the world. Like, it started the overarching story with Voldemort. It added the Night Bus. It added Dementors, Patronuses. The Wizarding World just exploded.
Yeah.
But that scene in the Shrieking Shack, I f- I think it's the most powerful scene in the series to me, because when they reveal Peter Pettigrew, and he finally admits that he sold out his friends for personal gain. He said, um, Sirius, you don't understand. He would have killed me. And Sirius roars, then you should have died instead of betray your friends, as we would have done for you. And that line floors me every time, because it shows, like, he was their friend, and they would have gladly died for him, and
Yeah.
he betrayed them in that way. And that just made the characters feel so incredibly real to me,
Yeah.
that yeah, I like when I re-listen to that book, I'll listen to that chapter multiple times, because it's it's just so uh it's just so incredibly well done.
Yeah. It, it is. And that's sort of the I mean, it isn't quite the end of the book, but it is the drawing room. If you read it like a detective fiction book, that is the Agatha Christie drawing room. where all of this exposition is going. This is what has occurred, ladies and gentlemen. The culprit is still among us. Um, yeah, it is incredibly powerfully drawn scene, uh, and of course, it's not really resolved until the end of the series. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, when yeah, that one tiny act of mercy from Wormtail, and
yeah.
yeah, after like he's he's choking Harry to death, and Harry says, "You're going to kill me after I saved your life? You owe me." And just that one instant, and then yeah. So well, yeah, that's a I didn't really think of that connection between Azkaban and Hallows, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
connection between them. Yeah, well, speaking of drawing room scenes, I think we're just about at the end of our time, unfortunately.
It's been wonderful talking to you, Zosman.
Yes. Thank you so much for talking. This has been by far the longest podcast episode, and it's felt like the shortest because
Good.
it's been it's been I mean I love um I love almost nothing more than talking about books I love, and that's what we've been doing for the last 2 hours. So thank you,
Wonderful.
Nick. Thank you so much for being on, and I hope you'll be on again sometime in the future. But for now, thank you everyone for watching and listening, and um, I will see you next story.